I thought I was just the nanny until his wife noticed the bracelet on my wrist and the room went silent. Now I'm 24, a live-out nanny in Palo Alto, working for a tech founder everyone calls a visionary. I bike past houses with glass walls and lemon trees to a modern place that smells like fresh coffee and new wood. My job started simple. Preschool drop-offs, meal prep with tiny bento boxes, bedtime stories read under a soft lamp. I took it because student loans don't care about dreams. Tech families pay on time. That's what I told myself. And for a while, it was true. And NHE wasn't supposed to be part of my day. He lived on Zoom in a glass-walled office downstairs, hoodie and slippers, voice low and clipped. His wife ran the house like an air traffic controller. Calm, scheduled, always elegant. The first red flag was small. A larger than usual thank you tip folded under the kids' reading log. I messaged her to confirm. She replied with a thumbs up emoji and nothing else. I told myself it was fine, and that's when I should have paid attention. Little favors kept stacking. A black car instead of my bike when it rained. An accidental DoorDash order with my favorite sushi after I mentioned a rough day. "You deserve more than your salary," he said once, smiling like he'd solved a bug. The word sat in my mouth like a tablet you can't swallow. I laughed it off, because laughing was easier than asking why. But the line wouldn't leave. It echoed when I washed lunchboxes and zipped tiny jackets. "You deserve more than your salary." Why did it sound like a leash? Nights crept longer when product launches stacked. The house glowed with cold light. The espresso machine clicked like a metronome. The kids finally slept. He'd wander into the kitchen for sparkling water and, "How's your schedule next week?" He was good at being casual. A hand on the fridge door a beat too long. A joke about investors with names I pretended to recognize. "HR would explode if they saw our hours," he said, and I said, "HR would implode if they saw those snacks." Pointing at the kids, contraband gummies. He laughed. I wished the laugh felt harmless. It didn't. One Thursday, the bracelet appeared. Thin silver, barely there, cool against my skin when he clipped it on. "For the chaos you hold together," he said, voice soft, like the house might wake up and tell on us. I stepped back. The metal felt colder than the fridge handle. "I can't accept this," I said, fingers already fumbling at the clasp. He held up both hands. "It's just a thank you." Then quieter. "No one has to know." That was the second red flag. No, it was a siren. And that was the moment I knew something was off. And I told myself I'd leave it on the counter and text his wife. I told myself a lot of things. But the kids woke with a nightmare. The dishwasher beeped. Slack pings echoed from downstairs. I dropped the bracelet into my tote and promised the morning would be cleaner than the night. It wasn't. And Friday was family dinner. Guests, takeout from a place with tiny sauces. Laughter bouncing off the glass walls. The chandelier threw warm circles on the table. I plated mac and cheese and pretended I couldn't feel the bracelet grazing my wrist like a cold whisper. I should have taken it off. I know. "Can you grab more plates?" his wife asked, smiling in that careful way that felt like perfect posture. I walked back in with dishes and saw her eyes pause on my hand. The room didn't stop. Yet. But something paused inside it. "Cute," she said, still kind, still soft. "Where'd you get it?" The silver tapped my glass. The sound felt loud. He glanced up. Just a flicker, then a swallow. "It was a team gift," I said. Voice too bright. "Lame, I know." A guest laughed at something unrelated. A phone buzzed. The AC hummed through the vent like white noise covering a confession. And that's when I realized the clasp was engraved inside, initials I hadn't noticed. His initials. My stomach went cold. NNHE tried to save it with a joke. "She's overreacting. It's nothing," he said. To her, to me, to the room, I couldn't tell. "It's nothing," repeated in my head, hitting the same bruise as, "You deserve more than your salary." Two phrases, same leash. Another guest tilted her head, curiosity sharpening. Someone's camera lens blinked. I saw my reflection in it, small and cornered. I rubbed the bracelet like it might disappear if I warmed it. It didn't. That was the moment I knew the kitchen wouldn't be a refuge anymore. And I carried plates I didn't need to carry just to move. In the hallway, the air smelled like lemons and soap. I thought about student loans, about rent, about how quiet my phone would be if I lost this job. I thought about the kids, bedtime songs, and the way they relaxed when I braided hair and smoothed blankets. I thought about how no one has to know wasn't a kindness. It was a contract I never agreed to, and that's when I realized I'd run out of ways to pretend. When I came back, her smile was gone. Not angry, not yet, just focused. She stared not at me, but at the clasp. "Could you take that off?" she said, gentle like a nurse removing a bandage. The metal stuck under my nail. I swallowed and nodded. My hands trembled. The clasp clicked. The silver pooled in my palm like a cold coin. The room finally noticed the silence. You know that hush when a joke dies? It felt like that. Stretched thin, Nanny reached out, too fast, to take the bracelet from me, and she stepped between us so subtly I almost missed it. "I'll hold it," she said. The words were light. The air was not. Somewhere behind us, someone's fork chimed against a plate. The chandelier hummed. I could smell roasted garlic cooling. And that's when I knew the night wouldn't end the way it began. The bracelet sat in her palm like a verdict. She didn't say anything, not at first. The air in the room pressed down heavy, even though the AC still hummed. He tried again, louder this time. "It's nothing, really." But the words cracked. They sounded like a man drowning in his own script. Someone coughed into a napkin. Someone else shifted a chair, the scrape sharp against the wood floor. No one laughed. I froze. My body wanted to shrink, but my mind kept racing. Student loans. Rent. The kids upstairs. Every number on every bill I owed flashed through my head like ticker tape. If this job went, everything went with it. But then I looked at her hand, holding the bracelet like evidence. And I knew the choice wasn't really mine anymore. NNSHE. Set it down on the table, right next to the serving dish. Silver against porcelain. A symbol in plain sight. "We'll talk later," she said, to no one in particular. Her voice was soft, but the edges were sharp enough to cut. That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to stay private. Not in this house. Not with these guests. NNTHE. Rest of the dinner blurred. Laughter tried to restart, but it came out forced, brittle. He poured more wine than usual, hand unsteady. I avoided his eyes. Every clink of a fork against a plate sounded like a gavel. Every buzz of a phone made me wonder if someone was already texting what they saw. And maybe they were. The silence between jokes stretched like rubber bands, ready to snap. After dessert, I slipped into the kitchen to load dishes, breathing in the smell of garlic and lemon soap just to ground myself. That's when he came in. He leaned against the counter, too close, the fabric of his hoodie brushing my arm. His voice dropped. "Don't overthink this. She's dramatic. You're safe." Dramatic. Safe. The words made my stomach turn. "You're too sensitive," he added when I didn't answer. That phrase, like a needle sliding under skin. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me small. "And if I'm not?" I asked, low. My voice shook, but it was there. His jaw tightened. "Then maybe this job isn't for you." That was the leash snapping tight. I could almost hear it. That was the moment I knew he wasn't just careless. He was dangerous. Not in the way of fists, but in the way of power. He could ruin me with a reference, with one email, with silence. And I didn't answer. I went back to stacking dishes, fingers slippery with soap. He left after a minute, footsteps heavy, door shutting too hard. The echo rattled the glassware. My hands shook so badly I dropped a plate in the sink. It cracked, not shattered. Just a line down the middle, like me. I stood there, staring at the split, listening to voices rise again in the dining room. And I thought, that could have been me. Broken, but not enough to be obvious. Just enough to be unfixable. Later that night, lying in the guest room, I couldn't sleep. The bracelet's outline still burned into my wrist, even though it was gone. My phone buzzed past midnight. A text. Unknown number. "Don't get in the middle of this. It's bigger than you." I sat up, heart racing, screen light cold in the dark. I wanted to believe it was spam, but I knew it wasn't. That was his voice, only typed. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just a witness. I was a liability. And I saved the message, fingers trembling. Screenshot. Backup. My student loans whispered in my head, telling me to delete. My gut told me to keep it. I kept it. That was the first line of defense. Proof. Not much, but proof. I didn't know yet who I'd need to show it to. But I knew one thing. I couldn't pretend anymore. The chain was already broken. The question now was, what would I do with the pieces? NNTHE next morning. The house looked the same. Sunlight through glass walls, coffee brewing. Kids arguing over cereal. But under it all, a hum, like wires heating. She moved through the kitchen silent, her ring glinting, her eyes never landing on me. He didn't come down for hours. When he did, his hoodie hood was up, like that could hide him. I kept my head down, but every sound felt amplified. The spoon clinking against ceramic, the kids, laughter too high-pitched, the slam of the fridge like a door closing on something bigger than us. And that's when I knew this wasn't over, not even close. The weekend blurred into routines, but the air was different. Heavier, thicker, like every sound was carrying too much weight. I braided the kids' hair, tied shoes, wiped peanut butter from cheeks. On the outside, everything was normal. On the inside, every glance felt loaded. She barely spoke to me, but when she did, her words were clipped. Lunch is at 12. They need jackets. Nothing more. Her perfume lingered sharp and citrusy when she passed, but she didn't look at me. And that silence said more than words. And Sunday night, he cornered me again, this time in the garage, while I was tossing recycling. "You're making this bigger than it is," he hissed, eyes darting toward the door like he was the one hiding. He leaned close enough that I smelled coffee and stress on his breath. "Don't say anything. For your own good," that line. For your own good. As if my silence was some gift he was giving me. I gripped the bag too tight, plastic crinkling under my hands. "It's not my secret to keep," I whispered. His smile dropped. "It is now." And that was the moment I knew he wasn't asking anymore. He was warning me. Monday morning hit like a test I hadn't studied for. Drop off at preschool. Target run for snacks, the usual. But in my tote bag, buried under receipts, my phone buzzed with the screenshot I couldn't stop looking at. That midnight text. Proof that I wasn't imagining things. Proof that someone wanted me quiet. And maybe, just maybe, proof I could use. But proof is a double-edged blade. Who do you show? Who do you trust? That was the question chewing through me all day. NNTHAT night, she finally spoke. The kids were asleep. The dishwasher hummed. The house smelled like dish soap and roasted chicken. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, her voice calm but sharp. That bracelet, where did it really come from? No warmth, no curiosity, just steel. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, my chest heavy. Finally, I said, "He gave it to me. I didn't want it." Silence stretched. Her nails tapped against the counter, sharp little clicks. Then she laughed. But it wasn't humor. It was something else. "Of course he did." She turned away, pouring herself wine like I wasn't even there. And that was the moment I realized she wasn't surprised. She already knew what kind of man he was. NNTHE, week dragged. He oscillated between charm and threats. Tuesday, he left a latte on the counter with a sticky note. "Thanks for holding it all together." Wednesday, he caught me in the hallway and muttered, "Stop acting paranoid. You're safe here." Safe. Like a cage is safe. By Thursday, my nerves were frayed. Every Slack ping from his phone in the office downstairs sounded like a countdown. Every time my wrist brushed where the bracelet had been, I felt a phantom weight. And that's when I knew this would explode sooner or later. I just didn't know how. NNTHE explosion came Friday. Dinner again, but smaller this time. Just a handful of friends, colleagues. The kind of people who nod too much, laugh too loudly. The chandelier light hit too bright. I carried plates, trying to vanish into the background, until one of the guests, a woman with a sharp bob and sharper tongue, gestured at me and said, "Cute bracelet, by the way. Where'd you get it?" My stomach dropped. The bracelet wasn't even on my wrist. It was gone. But the memory was alive in the room. I froze. Her eyes flicked between me and his wife. The silence was suffocating. NNHE jumped in fast. Oh, just some silly joke. A team gift. His voice too cheerful, too rushed. She raised her eyebrows. His wife's jaw clenched. The hum of the AC filled the silence until it was unbearable. And then her voice cut through. Team gift? Funny. I never got one. The room went still. Forks hovered mid-air. A glass clinked too loud. And that's when I realized the leash wasn't just breaking. It was snapping in public. And once it snapped, there would be no hiding. Not for him. Not for me. The silence after her words was brutal. No one breathed. No one dared to move. He chuckled, a nervous little sound that cracked halfway through. Come on, he said, raising his glass too quickly, spilling a drop of red wine on the tablecloth. You know how people exaggerate. But the drop spread like blood on white fabric, a stain you couldn't ignore. Her eyes never left mine. Do they? She asked. It wasn't for him. It was for me. NNTHAT was the moment I felt the ground tilt. My chest tightened, palms sweaty against the porcelain plate I was still holding. I wanted to disappear. But everyone was watching now. Their gazes felt heavy, like spotlights. Someone coughed. Another shifted uncomfortably in their chair. But no one spoke. They didn't need to. The scene was already loud enough without words. And I set the plate down and backed into the kitchen, pretending I had work to do. My hands shook as I ran water over dishes. The faucet hissed. The soap smelled sharp. The silverware clinked too loud in the sink. My mind kept looping. The bracelet, the initials, the midnight text. Proof stacked on proof. And I kept hearing his voice. It's nothing. You're too sensitive. For your own good. Toxic phrases that stuck like gum you can't scrape off. And that's when I realized I wasn't the only one hearing them anymore. NNHE came into the kitchen a minute later. His face was tight, red under the warm lights. You're making me look bad, he hissed. His voice was low, sharp, meant to cut. You think anyone's gonna take your side? You're a nanny. I'm the one paying you. He leaned closer, eyes burning. Without me, you're nothing. That phrase. The leash in its purest form. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped a glass. But I didn't. I set it down carefully and said nothing. Because saying nothing was my countermove. That was the moment I knew silence could be power too. And I walked out of the kitchen and into the dining room again. The table was quieter than before, the air tight with tension. His wife's gaze flicked to me, then to him. She didn't need answers. She already had them. And she had something else. An audience. A witness circle. Every guest at that table was watching a mask slip. Public exposure. The thing he feared most. And the thing he couldn't control anymore. NN dinner ended in fragments. People left early, murmuring goodbyes that weren't really goodbyes, just escapes. He tried to laugh it off, clapping shoulders, pouring more wine. But the stain stayed on the tablecloth, the bracelet stayed in her drawer, and the silence stayed in the room. I cleaned up dishes with shaking hands, every sound of porcelain stacking like a countdown. He disappeared into his office. She disappeared upstairs, and I was left alone in the kitchen with the hum of the dishwasher, the smell of lemon soap, and the knowledge that something irreversible had happened. NNTHAT night. I sat in my car outside the house, hands gripping the steering wheel. My phone buzzed again. Another text. Same unknown number. Don't push this. Last warning. My throat closed. I saved the screenshot. Proof layered on proof. I didn't delete. Not this time. My chest pounded as I drove away, headlights slicing through empty streets. Palo Alto was quiet, but my mind was loud. That was the moment I realized I wasn't running anymore. I was collecting, waiting, preparing NNTHE next morning. The kids were cheerful, oblivious. He acted like nothing had happened, making pancakes badly, burning the edges. She moved around him with ice in her veins, polite but sharp. And me? I moved like a ghost, but I kept my phone in my pocket, heavy with evidence. Bracelet. Texts, words, witnesses, symbols stacking into a story too loud to hide. And the leash? It was slipping. Thread by thread. NNTHAT. Friday night replayed in my head every time I closed my eyes. Her voice. His threat. The room going still. And the phrase that stuck like a scar, "Without me, you're nothing." Maybe once that would have worked. But now I had proof. And proof changes everything. The following week felt like living in the eye of a storm. On the surface, routines held, school runs, bedtime stories, laundry humming in the dryer. But under it all, something vibrated, like wires buzzing behind a wall. He tried to act normal, throwing around half jokes and fake charm, but his eyes kept flicking to me, sharp and restless. She, on the other hand, barely spoke at all. But silence can be louder than shouting. And hers was deafening. And midweek, it cracked. She came into the kitchen while I was cutting fruit, the smell of oranges sharp in the air. She placed her phone on the counter. A photo filled the screen. My wrist. The bracelet. A guest had snapped it, apparently, and sent it to her. So it wasn't just me seeing things. She said, voice steady. My throat closed. I wanted to explain, to defend, but she raised a hand. Don't. I know what he does. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the enemy in her story. He was. NNTHAT night. Voices carried through the glass walls. They thought the kids were asleep, but the house echoes. Her voice, sharp as broken glass. You humiliate me in front of everyone. His, low and desperate. You're blowing this out of proportion. Then the slam of a door so hard the chandelier rattled. I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, the echo of that slam pounding in my chest. And that's when I knew the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. NN Friday, it broke. Another dinner, this time investors, people who wrote checks with more zeros than I could ever imagine. I wasn't supposed to be part of it, but nannies are invisible until they're not. I carried trays, poured wine, tried to fade into the background. Until she stood, glass in hand. Her voice was calm, controlled. Funny thing, she began, eyes on him. My husband likes giving gifts, sometimes even to the nanny. The word hit like thunder. Nanny. Guests shifted, eyebrows raised. His face drained color. That's not, he started, but she cut him off. Should we show them the bracelet? Gasps, whispers, the kind of sound a room makes when it's watching someone fall. And that was the moment his mask shattered in public. NNHE stammered, reaching for a laugh that never came. One investor pulled out his phone. Another leaned back, arms crossed. I stood frozen with a tray, heart hammering, the sound of ice cubes rattling in glasses louder than anything else. He tried one last line, desperate. You're all overreacting. That word again. Overreacting. The leash snapping in real time. She set the bracelet on the table, silver gleaming under the lights. Tell them it's nothing, she said. And no one laughed this time. NNTHE fallout was immediate. The room fractured. Whispers, texts, exits. He followed her into the kitchen, but the door was glass, and everyone saw. His face red, his hands moving fast, hers calm, unmoved. Then she walked out with the kids, not looking back. He stood alone, sweating, investors avoiding his eyes. The man who built an empire with a hoodie and a pitch deck couldn't build an alibi in his own house, and that was the moment I knew the leash was gone. He wasn't holding it anymore. I left quietly that night, my tote bag heavy with the screenshots, my chest lighter than it had been in weeks. The air outside smelled like wet grass after sprinklers. My phone buzzed once more. Another unknown number, another threat. But this time, I didn't flinch. I saved it. I saved everything. Proof stacked like bricks. And I thought, if he tries to bury me, I'll dig him out first. It's been months now. I don't work there anymore. Word spread fast. Investors talk, Palo Alto whispers. He's still around, but not the same. Reputation cracked like that plate in the sink. Me? I found another family, quieter, safer. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection, I swear I see that bracelet again, cold against my skin. And it reminds me, some gifts aren't gifts. They're chains waiting to be pulled. NNSO. Here's my question. Would you have stayed quiet to keep the job or spoken up, knowing it could end everything?